Yeah, so Pete is a VFX supervisor. He notably worked on the RR movie, which is one of the best, biggest blockbuster in India. And if you had the chance to see it, it's a very good movie too. And he made many other things, but he will tell you it right away. Thank you, Pete, for being there with us today. And yeah, now let's enjoy your talk.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I just want to kind of get a show of hands of who's actually used Kitsu. I am preaching to the choir. Brilliant. Okay, right. So, wicked. So there's a lot of screenshots in here, a lot of stuff how we've actually utilized it and how we've incorporated it into our pipelines. So basically, I am a VFX supervisor. I've been in the industry for more years than I can count. So I started out around about 95, 96 and got it in, set up a studio over in India back in 2009, worked on around about 40, 50 films out there, including one called Bahubali and also the RRR film, which went on to win an Oscar, not for visual effects though, unfortunately. We did get into the top 23 and then got kicked out, but never mind. So I want to talk about kind of skimming over what we did within RRR, but mostly what we did at my next venture, which was a company called Ryff, and they were a company which dealt with product placement within content, i.e. TV shows, films, and so on and so on. So basically, it's project management on hundreds of projects and not going nuts, trying to manage all of those and trying to get everything out at the same time, or at least trying not to. So just again, background, when we initially adopted Kitsu, it was around about late 2018, early 2019. And that was during the throes of this particular film, which is Rajmouli's RRR. At that stage, we'd primarily used several different pieces of software to do production tracking. So we'd used Tactic, we'd used Cerebro, we'd used F-Track, we've used Shot Grid, Gun, Flow, whatever the heck it's called now. And we kind of like were looking to try and find another piece of kit that would actually be able to manage something of this scale. Now we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shots. And it was just kind of out of the blue that CGY's Kitsu just came to light on one of my Google searches. Got a copy of that down, tested it, put it in front of the guys, and they loved it from day one. So not just the production guys, but also the artists as well. It was straightforward, it was simple. You didn't need a degree in computer science like you do with Tactic, for example. And it was really, really good for us to basically be able to feed material back to them. And it also helped when COVID hit. So the guys could obviously work neatly remotely, and also we could give feedback just like we were sitting next to them. So we used it again, like I say, quite extensively throughout. It went through all those shots that you just saw. Unfortunately, I had to remove some of the comments on there, but you get the point. So we used primarily the stuff for asset management, for keeping track within the playlist, and obviously versioning and so on. So apologies if I stand in front of the screen. I tend to walk a lot when I'm percolating. So then I stepped out of that. I got out of the film industry and got into advertising, tech, bit of AI in there as well, and did something what's called virtual product placement. So what that is basically going through and, in essence, analyzing an entire film, TV show, and working out where, say, for example, there's a surface, we can stick a bottle of something on there. There's a TV screen, we can basically stick a brand in there. There's an existing out-of-home structure, for example, we can obviously replace that. And also, if there is a negative space and it's in situ and it's convenient, then we can basically put in a out-of-home structure or digital out-of-home structure in there as well. So the primary way that it kind of operated was we had an AI system which would go through and determine and detect all these locations. It would then segregate those off, categorize them, bin the ones that didn't work, i.e. they weren't contextually relevant. It's in a scene, say for example, someone's getting stabbed. No one wants to say, stabby, stabby, bottle of Coke. Doesn't really work, okay? So we're working on areas or shots which are contextually relevant. All right? They will then go into our particular marketplace, that particular marketplace, which I'll skim over in a bit. But that would then feed that into our individual pipeline production, and then the insertions get produced and then delivered back to the content, back to the client. So what we ended up having was having brand campaigns. So we had two sets of clients. One was content, one was the brands, and trying to mar those two together. Very, very tough order to do. So there was a lot of conditions, though, a lot of scenarios where we're actually having multiple brand campaigns across multiple titles. So we'd have for one show, we'd have one for the other show, one for another show. So the deal would come through of like, okay, we need 10 different placements in 5 different shows, as an example. But it's the same product or the same brand. So you've got the entire mez, the entire film, the entire episode, those determinations of those placements, and those determinations of those particular assets that are going to go in there. So that's all fine, well and good for one particular region. Let's say, for example, you have a license to basically showcase this thing for like 6 months or something. But then you want to change the brand. Another brand comes in and says, hey, I like that location. I want to put that in as well. We need to be able to asset track that. We need to be able to project manage that as well. Now, that's pretty tough in not just following it in a regular production process, but actually be able to put it into a production tracker also. It's a little bit tricky. So we can now, thanks to we kind of wrangled the way that Kitsu kind of like handles things internally between playlists and sequences and shots, for example, and also having separate projects to basically manage all this through an insertion order. So that insertion order normally it would come into like Jira or it would come in through HubSpot or something like that. We actually ended up piping it straight into Kitsu also. So the volume that we were dealing with was, on our primary S3 staging, we had around 46,000 titles. That was TV shows, individual episodes, et cetera, et cetera. So you maybe have one show that's got 36 episodes in it, for example. And we had around about 146,000 unique placements. Those placements are, it's a TV show, it's a table. That's not shots. You see that placement at least once. Okay, so there could be, 10 shots times 146,000, depending on how many shots there are in that particular show, in that particular sequence. So when I came in 2022, there were numerous issues. Everything was basically very, very back of a napkin. So we had no independent centralized tracker. We had numerous independent Google Sheets, no centralized production storage. We had teams in 3 locations. We had reviews we were doing on remote systems on AWS because local systems were not good enough. We had no metrics reporting whatsoever. So everything was like done through contractors, freelancers, and unfortunately, I have to say, devs. And nothing was basically being tracked as far as the production process was concerned. So we had to revise that. So just in a general kind of overview nutshell, we had obviously numerous independent initial Google Sheets, went to Kitsu. We had no centralized storage. Initially, we went onto Google Drive so that the guys could basically at least save stuff in the same location. Then we had another piece of software like Resolve could call on the file, and everyone had the same file mapping. That eventually went onto S3. Collaboration abilities, Kitsu again, and obviously utilizing the Resolve collaboration over VPN. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to be allowed to do that. You can. You just got to be careful. We had stuff in 3 locations, VPN again, and also Kitsu for the guys to collaborate. Remote production team, VPN and Kitsu, noticing the theme. Reviews done on remote desktops. We had pipeline security fixes, Kitsu, et cetera, et cetera. Lack of metrics reporting, take a guess. So everything basically, we started, not just utilizing Kitsu as a central review system, but gradually over time, as you'll see, we started utilizing it not only as a production tracker, but also as middleware as well. So it's actually tying into a lot of other aspects within the actual process. So when we first came in, it was for a show for, I mean, I dare say you've all seen it on the, flicking through like the backside of the channel's World Poker Tour. You've seen the channel, you've seen basically people playing poker. So what we were doing was replacing the brands in stuff that was already there. So you had already had a brand or maybe even the company's own branding in there. We had a sponsorship from Virgin Voyages, we had one from Ginting, we had another one from Guinness and so on. So we were swapping out those particular logos, swapping out that branding for that one, but doing it at scale. And as a result, we had around about 1,700 shots in one season. So that's 34 episodes, and each episode was around about anything between about 40 and 100 shots. And we had to turn those around in a matter of days. So we initially had an AI system which would detect the logo, remove it, and then replace it. That worked around about 25% of the time. The rest of the time, it was bums on seats, a lot of cleanup, a lot of roto, a lot of masking. And we had to keep track of, obviously, where everything was, what was being stuck, whether it was a mask, and so on and so on. A lot of that AI removal, later on down the line, the pipeline, got completely binned. It was all done through process. It was all done through literally building out a framework. That framework was built in such a way that one could then just swap out the asset on the back end and just re-render the entire thing if you wanted to change the brand. So we could basically build out a framework for like replacing the artwork on the TV, for example. Once that's been built out, all you need to do, change the brand, go into the asset system in Kitsu, mark that, and then re-render the entire thing, and the entire episode gets to get rebranded across the entire board. So it literally take you 20 minutes, something like that, to rebrand an entire episode. That was further on down the line. So speaking of assets, we had the primary assets library. This came to be based off the library system that Frank thankfully developed. And this was our primary one that we could call into every single project that we were dealing with. So every asset that came in, every brand, whether it was 3D, whether it was 2D, whether it was a digital out-of-home structure that we built, whether it was an overpass model, everything got pumped into here. That tied into our S3, and then that tied into the actual projects as well. So we had around, 2,317 assets. That's ranging from brands through to 3D models and so on. I'm scrubbing through it really quick, so obviously it's not having time to update the thumbnails, but you get the point. We've also got a bunch of other metrics in here, for example. We've got the categories. So like principally within the actual main list, you've got the category of whether or not it's something to do with cosmetics, it's a vehicle, it's a motorbike or whatever. We've got the other principal categories and subcategories, whether or not it's alcohol or if it's alcoholic, non-alcoholic, if it's cosmetic, makeup, etc. Whether the model or the artwork was supplied by the artist, supplied by the brand, or whether or not we built it. Dimensions X, Y, and Z, that's the dimensions of the actual asset itself. Like if it's a 2D, you've got X by Y, if it's X, Y, Z, then it's how big it is in millimeters. So we can then cross-reference that against our placement, which we've already got another metric there, which you'll see in a bit, that's the actual defined space. So if that is bigger than that, it doesn't fit, it won't work. So in a place like this, you could put a Volvo. It'd look completely blow out the shot, but you could always scale it down. So we had different rules in there for when a client asked for something, it would literally go, yep, that's going to work, or no, sorry, that's not going to work in that particular location because of these particular rules themselves. Okay. So again, like I mentioned, we've got additional brand metadata going in there, we've got the dimensions, we've also got the country and the region, and we've also got the brand owner. This is important later on down the line so that sales can then go, right, show me everything that you've done for Chanel, and they can just pull every single shot. You can pull every single shot that's related to, let's say, House of Guarani, for example, or anything that's basically been done for Korea. You can basically just go every single shot and tie that in and pull that in and be able to extrapolate every single shot that inputs and outputs as well. This basically led to us building a separate production project, And that's to track every single job order. Now, this ties in with the Jira tickets that we get, with HubSpot and so on. But we needed something within a centralized location to be able to talk to each other. Getting Jira to talk to this thing, Jira's API, has anyone dealt with that? Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, I noticed the pain in your eyes there. So we thought, right, okay, let's at least just get the Jira link and at least the ID, so we can put that in there. So with sales references, okay, we need the information for ID, for sales ID 10, we can pull it straight away, and we know exactly what the end result was as a bunch of samples, for example. This, again, becomes important later on down the line, so we can say, okay, which particular assets we use for ID 10, which particular shots we use for ID 10. So cross-referencing, having all this information within this platform gives us the ability to be able to pull that in different ways. We're also, within the production project itself, we're also going through and casting every single asset that's been done. Now, we're actually casting twice. Sounds kind of productive, so we're actually casting it on the shot, and we're casting it on the actual insertion order asset as well, insertion order entry in the production project also. Again, this becomes important later on, and I'll explain why there. Because you can see, for ID 100, we had that particular artwork. For 98, we had this Korean poster, for example, for an online ordering app, and so on and so on. So not only the poster, but also the billboard, the 3D asset that was built that artwork went into. Okay? So other metrics that we're basically putting in, so the artwork path, so we know the actual location where it's going to be, whether or not it's a specific vendor, the type of billboard, because we actually work with specific billboard vendors like JCDecaux, LNX, etc., because they have their own designs, their own branding, so we need to make sure that that is followed suit and tracked also. We've also got, in the episodes, we've also got the whether or not the content is progressive or if it's interlaced, whether or not it's drop frame timecode, very important when you're dealing with stuff coming from, especially from the east, whether or not there's a timecode offset, because some cases it may be offset by 10 hours, etc., and what the UUID of the actual asset, the film or the TV show, is located. Now, the reason why these timecode offsets, etc., are there is so that dev can then calculate their offsets when they're doing the delivery back. Otherwise, when we export it, it'll do it from 0. That's going to be a problem, especially when they've given it to us with the TC offset of 10 hours, and we're giving it back to them as starting at 0. There's going to be a massive problem back in production later on. So everything that we get, we have to give back, plus the insertion, no change, not even a single pixel difference in the entire shots. So our principal platform was a piece of software called Sphera. That's in essence, our marketplace with every single placement, given opportunities. You can search by region, search by whether or not it's an object going in there, a billboard going in there, whether or not you want to have a handbag, it's cosmetics, et cetera, and it will then give you a list of a list of proposed locations that are going to be suitable for that particular context, for that particular type of brand, for that particular type of location. Okay? So here, for example, we did one for, I think for Mars. This was for Orbit Gum, just placing a pack of Orbit Gum on the lady's desk. Nothing sells Christmas like Orbit Gum. So what we could then basically do, yes, unfortunately I can't showcase the back end, but at the end of the day, what we also have the ability to do is what ties in from our middleware, which is where all the placements are devised and logged and cross-checked, is the central UUID of the actual episode and also the UUID of the actual placement itself. So you'll have one ID for the asset, you'll have another ID for the actual placement itself. That's all internally tracked and internally linked together as well. Mostly through the what we call the Scaro backend, but also that's logged in here as well. That's done manually, and that's the reason for that is basically so that, number two, there's no API to connect the two, but primarily so that the two numbers when we're doing the logging report later on, that will cross-correlate. So we can then go through, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we can do different assets for the same locations. So once we've done the primary framework, the primary project build out, and we've done the work once we've got an asset, we can just swap it out. Not only just through 2D, but we can also do it with 3D as well. So that's all perfectly fine and good, but how do you keep track of that in this? So you can do it through versioning. So version 5 on that one has got that particular type of billboard that's on the TV, the ad that's running on the TV. And version 5 on that one is basically got the logo and you've got the pin mark in there for the 3D. But also if you then swap, come on Pete, swap. There we go. We can basically swap it out to version 3, which is the bike. Now, here's the problem. We can't do version 5 is this particular one for everything. Version 4 is this one for that particular one. People are working on this. Artists are working on it. You'll go through revision. So you may have one for one brand. It may be version 10 for that shot. It may be version 8 for that shot. So we need to be able to keep track of that also. Which particular shots, which particular ones work with that particular job and that particular shot. So we utilize the playlists. Playlists are good in the way that, sorry, before I go into that. So the breakdowns basically, again, as I mentioned previously, we are basically assigning the individual assets to the individual shots, okay? But you notice we've got several assets, in other words, several deals that are related to a single shot. Okay, so again, how do we keep track of that? We utilize the playlist feature. So in the playlist feature, we can specify the version, and when you update the shot, that doesn't change. You have to force it to basically change version. And by naming the actual playlist based on the same insertion order number, you've got a correlation. So therefore, you've got a correlation between the insertion order, the assets that have been casted within the insertion order project, and you've also got the correlation between the individual shot and also the casting which has been done within the shots themselves. So everything should then pull together neatly. So with that, you can swap everything out within Resolve, which is our primary tool of choice that we're using. And the reason why we're using Resolve and not something else like, for example, Blender's Compositor, is that we needed that fidelity of grain matching. We needed that fidelity of color space. We needed something that we can guarantee that whatever we get in, we're going to give out exactly. And we didn't need any kind of unnecessary compression or anything else going on there. So again, this gave us the ability also for collaboration. It's the only tool that was available really. We could do some major collaboration work. So I'll have one artist working on one shot, another artist working on another shot. Once everything's been logged off in Kitsu and approved, once that's done, backend script notes that that's completed, and then it will fire the mez off. Okay, fire off the final render. So we have the ability then, again, we can swap out assets for different brands, different products, dynamically as we need to. Okay, so at the end of the day, we've got, in essence, one project, multiple brands, the entire thing is completely and utterly tracked. Every single instance of every single asset that's been utilized within that singular shot has then been followed, and we can then swap it out on the fly as necessary. That basically means that the only thing that we need to do is build the asset. Lighting's done, comp setup's done, masking's done. The only thing we need to do is basically swap the asset out. So we're basically building out frameworks, we're building out templates, and we can basically swap that out. So again, this is full human-driven, it's not AI. There was a AI process that we were building before things went sideways, and that basically was that it would, in essence, analyze the actual location, be able to give a brief camera solve and a brief lighting setup. Then check it, feed it back in, and give advice to the artist, hey, your rim light's off, or your grain's not matching. Go and fix it. Wasn't controlling anything. It was giving advisories. That's the best way I can explain it. So we're dealing with, again, even on one particular episode, you're dealing with, 20, 30, 40 individual shots. If you notice the way that Resolve's structured, every single video track is basically a placement. All right? That's how it was structured. So every single different video track was labeled VPO1, VPO2, VPO3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. So it was structured in that way for a reason. And that reason is because you can export that information. So that track number, that track name can then get chucked out through a third party that can then get analyzed and processed to lead into the population. Because this stuff has to turn around quick. We have 24 hours, sometimes maximum 2 days to do this. Initially, we were doing something, it took us about a week and a half, but we were turning this stuff around in 24 hours, and that's with 20 artists. That wasn't with like a team of 500 or anything. This was 20 people doing this, all remote. So we used OTIO. So we chucked out through OTIO, and the reason why we chucked out through OTIO was that we had 99.9% of the information, apart from if you're dealing with let's say for example, if you're dealing with a full mez, a full episode, all the way end to end. You're chopping the shots, you're taking them out, chopping it, taking out. You need to know where the actual start of the frame is. Okay, the first frame. OTIO doesn't give you that. It gives you the information of exactly how big the slug was before the frame starts. It doesn't tell you when the start frame is. It tells you the duration of the gap between it. So you're writing a script to basically extrapolate that to determine all of the individual start frames for every single video track. That is then chucked out, converted, and initially down the CSV route, we had 2 sets of CSVs chucked out. One was for sales, just to go, hey, this is where everything is, this is where every single shot is. And the other one was basically for Kitsu. So it will generate a script generate a CSV that is in the exact format that we'd need to basically bring things into Kitsu. Just open the CSV loader, drag the CSV in, populates the shots, boom, done. That got changed further down the line. Unfortunately, I can't show that. So that what we actually had was a separate script inside Resolve that took the entire flow and just talked directly to Kitsu and generated the shots automatically. Resolve's based on Python backend, so it's very, very straightforward to basically generate just through the script section in Resolve itself. Changing that one that we'd already done took around about 30% rework, and the reason for that is just the way that it was being read. Resolve is more favorable when it's giving you information than OTIO. So we're basically bringing everything in, so that was basically in essence the script that we had to determine the individual shots, determine the individual VPOs, which we used as the sequence element. So the sequence element we used as the individual placement, so we could categorize them and group them together and to say, hey, this is an object, this is a poster, this is a TV screen, for example. And then that would basically go into Kitsu and build out the entire structure from ground up. And the way we basically did that was through using a template project. So we had a separate script that would read the structure of a template project, not just the blank fields, the individual criteria, the individual shots, the individual tasks, but it'd also go through the individuals who were working on them, the artists, and automatically assign those as well. So whatever we already had, because it was the exact same people who were going to be working on this thing, so we didn't need to go reassign every single time, because we're dealing with so many of these things per day. We're spending more time setting up the projects than actually bloody doing them. So we thought, okay, let's have a template that we can just read and then just duplicate everything that's in there itself. There's no kind of magic bullet to do that. You've got to go through each and every single one, read it, replicate it, read it, replicate it. And then go through afterwards and then generate the individual shots and then upload the individual cuts that are being done, which I'll come to in a sec. So what it'd also do, it would go through and then generate the folder structure for us on the back end. So through that one single script, it's basically cutting the shots, it's creating the Kitsu elements, it's generating the back end, it's chucking out the individual clips, and that clip is basically all done through FFmpeg, it's not done through Resolve. It's taking that information out so that it doesn't need to re-encode it. It just literally cuts it at the exact frames that it needs to cut. Generates the time codes. So we're basically cutting shots straight off the timecode info. We're generating the Kitsu H264 for conforming, and it's done in the way that Kitsu likes, so that it doesn't need to re-encode it on the back end, and that saves time on less load on the server, especially when you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of shots going through it continuously. Generates a JPEG sequence for match move, creates a folder structure on the production storage, creates a Kitsu project from the pre-built template, creates the episode sequence, which is the VPO and the shots, uploads the conform QC clips into those individual shots also, and then also notifies the HODs through the notification system. It generates a single comment saying, stuff's up there. And as a result, they'll get information, they'll get notification as to that it's ready for them to start working on. We've also got the additional analytics as well, which you'll notice there. We've got the standard ones, frame in, frame out, FPS, timecode duration, timecode in, timecode out. That was before they introduced the timecode feature in Kitsu, and that's a bit of a sore point because they could have done it earlier. Because this took me so long to calculate, especially when you're dealing with, 2997 stuff, 23976 stuff. You're dealing with drop frame, you're dealing with interlaced. Trying to get FFmpeg to cut on exactly that frame works in one scenario. You tweak your script, you've broken it for that one, but it works on that one now. And you're going literally back and forth, so you're building so many individual rules and permutations depending on the type of content, the type of frame rate the MES is, for example, whether or not it's interlaced, whether or not it's drop frame. Such a pain in the backside, but yeah, finally managed to end up doing that. We've also got, let's say, these three COV values: COV average, COV high, COV low. That's coverage. So that's a metric that determines, based on the input footage and the output footage, so the stuff at the beginning and the stuff at the end of the pipeline with the insertion, how much of a percentage is covering the frame. Now, sales will go to you, okay, we need something that's, it needs to cover the frame by 20%. Sounds like a moderate number, 20%. 20% is that much of the entire flipping frame. That's 12%. So when they say, oh, it needs to be 20%, it's like, look, dude, seriously, 20%, that's going to be that. We're going to literally cover the entire frame with brand. Brands will be happy. Content's going to be pissed. Work out the sweet spot and let me know. So that was used, in essence, as an evidence or how can I say it, get out of jail for me, really, as an argument point. So I can literally go, right, okay, you want something that's 20%? Okay, fine, go speak to these people and showcase exactly what's going to actually happen here. That was actually calculated through basic computer vision and just working out difference key percentages, comparing one pixel to the next pixel and just literally just sandwiching them over the top. And when it's white, it marks it as true. When it's black, it's not. And then there's a little threshold between the two. But that's basically about it. We also had an average of like what it was for the entire placement, and that's basically taking all the values for, and this worked it out not just for every single shot, it worked it for every frame. So it's going through doing frame analysis, because sometimes the brand comes in, the camera's panning, okay? So, or it's zooming, it's going bigger, it's getting smaller. So it's going to give you the top end values, it's going to get the lower values. So in this particular one, VPO 5, high value 4.85%, lowest, average 1.82, relatively smallish. And the reason for that, the lowest value is 0, which means it was off frame at the start or the end of the shot, or somewhere within the shot it was. So you try and plan everything, works for a time, and then someone throws a bloody spanner in the works. So when we joined, when I joined, there was Slack and Google Sheets at the time. So Slack's okay. Slack, I say okay, passable, workable, tolerable, works with Kitsu. You can literally just put your Slack ID in and it'll talk to it. So when an artist gets a notification, boink, get a ping on the phone, get a ping on the desktop, great. And Google Sheets. Now, our reporting, we basically built out a separate pull for it, so it literally just push all of the information straight to Google Sheets. People weren't using it at the time, were later on, but it gave that ability for us to basically push everything out. And because it was Google, it was real time. You could have the sheet open, there's another pull goes on in the background, poof, sheet updates. Awesome. Someone further upstairs decided to switch to Teams and Microsoft. Bastards. So that basically meant that the entire notification system balked. Slack got taken out of the picture completely, unsubscribed, not paying it for anymore. We've got Teams, we have to use that. So the other matter is basically all the reporting. Google got rescinded. So Google Drive went off, so we went off to S3. But it also meant that how the hell do we report all this stuff? So we're going to have to push this thing to Excel. Has anyone done SharePoint uploading with Python? Yeah? I could pull my own teeth and have a more pleasurable experience. So we ended up basically building 2 separate scripts. One was to do exactly what we were doing with Google Sheets before, but instead of actually having this single couple of lines of code that said, hey, send it to here. Okay, fine, go. We had about 3 different functions just to try and log into the damn thing, put all the bloody credentials in, plus some other fun and games, just to get the thing up to SharePoint and Excel. And the other fun fact was, if someone's got the Excel sheet open, doesn't bloody update, because Excel. So we had a separate, we kind of hid that one and made sure, right, okay, this other one, which is pulling from this, which made it dog slow but tough, is basically the data that you guys are going to have to pull your dashboards for and all that kind of stuff. But that's still left us with a problem with how the heck do we still get the notification that everybody's been familiar with on the with Slack. So we basically built a separate service to run on the Kitsu backend that just monitored the listener, checked for the notifications, checked for who was basically being spoken to, and then punting that through Azure to the Teams user. You can do it through webhooks, but everybody's getting that messaging, which will just completely and utterly flood you. So basically, you've got to do it for the individual. So that backend listener was there and built out, and we trimmed down the amount of information and just said, hey, go look at that. That was pretty much it. So to summarize, at the end of the day, we ended up with, like I say, 2,300 assets, which was 2D and 3D. By the November last year, when I left, we had 543 projects, and that's not including the individual TV episodes either. This is all within the same Kitsu instance, by the way. This isn't like separate ones and backups and saving them out. This is basically what was live on there. We had 18,300 shots logged. Okay, that's shots, not tasks. Okay. And obviously all of the media as well for the in and for the out as well, which basically sat on our S3. We didn't use traditional S3 setup like has been documented. It was basically a mount. And the reason for that is because we needed to push other stuff out and get it back and forth as well. Okay. Just coming to the end. As far as reporting is concerned, we were basically pulling timesheets, but we weren't pulling them in the traditional sense. We were pulling them with different structures. So for example, we were doing it daily. It was automated. All this is basically automated through crons. So we had it daily, what the artist did per day, that individual, so it lists every single artist, what they did that particular day itself, per task. That was a separate sheet. And that was then pivoted down to which particular shot it was, what VPO was, and then we had a separate pull of that particular insertion order sheet, and the insertion order shot was related to it through the playlists. Okay? The emitted time. Who forgot to fill out the timesheet? So that was pulled every single day, and that was basically a sheet that we used to circulate to everybody, but then the HODs went, can you stop doing that, please? Because they were the bloody ones who kept forgetting to fill out the bloody timesheets. HODs are the worst, man, seriously, when it comes to things like that. So we ended up building the script to actually notify them using the notification method, say, fill out your timesheet, you haven't done it in 3 days. So people were, okay, less embarrassed about it. We also did a full assets pull, which includes media. We also did full shots pull, including breakdown, based on the insertion order that we needed. Okay, and also, yeah, the full insertion jobs pull also. So the reporting, as you can see, okay, you've got some stuff that's hidden. That's old scripts that we're basically doing. So we had a fair amount that was kind of running. We had basically the CSV fixes. We had basically the push for the UID asset matching. There was another one down here. Well, yeah, there you go. Kitsu Team's notification message service. My amazing naming conventions suck, but there you go. Not a programmer. And the primary reporting that we ended up having was, like I say, for the actual primary source, we'd get all this. So you get the full gamut of every single shot, okay? And also you'd get every single asset that was casted to it as well. Completely listed. And if I recall, who worked on it. So the full lot of every single information that sales, marketing, HR, accounts could basically pull from this thing. So they could figure out every single aspect of it. We didn't have the accounting system set up in Kitsu because the way that we operated was that every person had top-level access, because just in case they needed to create shots, just in case they needed to delete shots, tweak something at the top level, and we weren't there, for example. So we didn't utilize that, but HR and accounts had all of those information. They could cross-reference it via the ID of the individual. So we're pulling out all the assets, every single one also. Load. Right, fine. And because we've got all this info,
we have to.
Okay, hang on a minute. I can talk for England. I can. Sorry. We didn't want sales. Well, we tried to get them to use Kitsu. We tried. I tried for 6 months to get them to use it. Don't like it. It's like, why? What's wrong with it? But then at the end of the day, we worked out that nobody even logged it in. They didn't even test it. They didn't even check it. So we thought, okay, let's build them something specific just for their particular needs. They can search per shot. They can search for content. They can search for asset. They can search for brand. They can search for a region. They can do all this. So we basically took all the information that we were pulling from Kitsu and built a separate dashboard for them that they can go through and search for insertion orders, pull that stuff, pull the full sizzles that are in there also, related to the IO job, and also, I'll say, the content itself. So not only can they do through that, they can do it, say, through the asset. They can see how many times this has basically been thrown out, how many times this asset's been used, how many times it's repeated, how many shots were in a particular job, and so on and so on. And then I left. So what's next? Now, for me, I'm coming to the end, don't worry. For me, project management starts at the beginning. Now, I'm from a visual effects background. I'm from a film and TV industry back then. And one thing I've always noticed is that the amount of repetition of data input is so ingrained, it's crazy. You got a set, you'll get 4 people logging the same shit. You'll get continuity, you'll get camera, you'll get VFX, you get DIT. They'll all log the same stuff, or at least 30% of it. So I thought, right, let's try and consolidate that. So basically, there was something that I've been developing since, on and off, since, I don't know, 2011, something like that. And we used it in kind of like in an initial version when I was at Makuta. We built out one for the Barbly film. And it was primarily for on-set logging, just to get the kind of shot information, get the camera information, and all that kind of stuff. So we built this thing out, but build it out within the traffic light system, because the last thing you want is to miss something. So it was there right in your face. It was annoying. It was amber. It's like, you've not filled it out, you muppet. Go and get it done. With the ability to use libraries, so you could choose your cameras, you could choose basically camera heads, you could set all your kind of initial kit bag stuff, you could set your lenses, serial numbers, all following the VS standards. You have the ability to basically also collaborate, so you have other individuals on set, and you can also restrict them to say, okay, you only have the access to this one particular scene, because as a supervisor, you may be pulling in 3 or 4 external studios in to supervise those particular ones. So you may not want to actually have them accessing the full project. Okay, so you only give them access to specific ones. We've also got a team chat in there as well. Again, a lot of this is through knowledge of like when I was working with Kitsu and trying to work out, okay, I need this thing to do this. It kind of gave me inspiration to do these sorts of things. So you could have a supervisor back at the studio saying, oh, hey, have you logged this particular shot yet? Or go get me a coffee, depending on your preference. And one thing I also want to kind of talk to you guys about, and also yourself, is that I'm connecting to Kitsu directly as well.
Right.
But I've got a couple of things I want to kind of go, how, not how, I know how, what connects to Kitsu and where. So that's for round 2. Thank you.
Thank you.